Fearless Leader Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Belton, and welcome to the first of many series of the Fearless Leader Podcast. This morning, I want to introduce Mr. David Pinkney.
Hello.
Gentleman I went through many years and worked with in education. A great administrator, great mentor, friend, everything along the line. So I invited Mr. Pinkney in, Dave in this morning, so we could have some open discussion about education.
Yeah.
So great to have you here, Dave.
Man, good to be here, man.
All right.
Good to be here, and I'm happy, man, that you started this, and I'm happy that the world is going to get an opportunity to hear you and what you do, and the questions and the answers, and I'm just excited about this whole thing, and we have seen a lot, gone through a lot, done a lot.
Yes, sir.
But it's still evolving, and it's still working together. So I'm just appreciative, man, that you had me, and I'm excited.
Great. All right, so let's just jump right into the first question. And Dave, for many years you've mentored many young men. We've worked together. We've from young men to high schoolers. Yeah. But explain what you believe mentoring is today, and how much of it is actually needed.
Okay. Well, just to give a little context, when we worked together in the junior high school level, and we did a lot of mentoring. I don't know if we thought it was mentoring initially. Mm-hmm. I think we saw needs, and we tried to fulfill needs that we recognized. Initially, they might have been academic, and then it became something else, and we developed a Saturday morning program. We developed something through the summer. We developed, I don't even know if you remember, a thing where we would come to school early. Students would meet us early at school and stay late. Mm-hmm. There were so many things that we created because of the need. And, as we see those young people today in their 20s and 30s with families, I was telling you the other day, I still see tears in their eyes when they see us, or when they see me and they say, "How's Mr. Belton doing?" They talk about their families, and they talk about when they were in school. And I think it took what we did back then to seeing the students, or the kids now, or the young men now and young ladies, to know how important it is. First of all, time went a whole lot faster than I thought it would go. So, 10, 15, 20 years zips by so fast. When I'm talking to a young man, a young lady, and they have their children standing beside them, is an amazing thing. But, it's so important, man, to get things like the truth to our students. And I can appreciate you because you never candy coated things, and while it might have seemed kind of rough to some people in the early grades, they grew into those truths, and they realized how important it was to have that knowledge early on. So mentoring, man, is cohesive. It brings things together. It should be consistent. And I know we worked on some things in the junior high school where we tried to meet with the high school administration, so that mentorship could be carried through. I think that's what we were really trying to do. I think some of the high schools were seeing it as an academic play, but we weren't really communicating academics at that time. We were talking more about a mentorship that could keep trust going through education.
Let me jump in. And I want to talk about how Dave actually, when we first started, Dave actually embraced me. So I'm gonna just jump on that real fast as a mentor, even in education as a teacher coming in. And remember Dave was saying, well, actually I'm gonna skip because I remember it was a time when you were like, we needed to make sure that there was a bridge gap. Oh, there was a bridge between the elementary school and the high school.
Right.
And so you were like, listen, we're not just sending our kids to these high schools and they not know what to look forward to or what's going to happen.
Right.
And I never forget, like, we invited high school teachers into the middle school, right, to talk about the next level.
That's
and so even though we did all of this mentoring, we making sure like you said, students came to school early and worked with us after schools. We had students respecting one another, built leadership teams and things like that. It still for you became about where do after we created this block and helped them with the mentoring, where do we send the kid to?
That's
and
right.
I thought that was crazy at the time, and I don't think schools are still doing that, right? I don't think folks are having those vertical our meetings where they're saying, okay, we've created this kind of kid, we need to pay attention to where we send them.
That's right.
Right, and I thought, like, as far as mentoring, I was like, wow, we created this kid, and Dave is saying now we need to pay attention to where we send the kids. So I always was impressed by that. Dave, I always thought that was like next level stuff, right? I thought that should always still be happening, but I just wanted to jump in real fast and just talk about this brother when it came to mentoring, because that was crazy.
But let me say this too. Well, before you go on,
Mm-hmm.
Any administrators watching, any teachers watching, any districts watching or hearing this, I would put that out as a challenge to you. If you are a 9th, 10th, 11th grade teacher, I would ask you, who do you expect in your school 3 years from now? And I would ask you, where are they?
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask you, what's stopping you from going to talk to them now? Determine what kind of student you want. Determine where they should be when they reach you,
Mm-hmm.
and walk that backwards and go get that student.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why you should wait 3 years. And we're sitting in the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So students have, in my opinion, have lost so much. It's going to take another year or two to see what we've lost, not just socially, not just the security of having a teacher there and working out or in reading, all those different aspects that we really took for granted in a regular school day have been lost. So as we look over the pandemic and the results of that, and even before that, I would encourage people not to wait. Go ahead and take a couple of steps back and meet with some of the teachers. It doesn't have to be the whole staff, but meet with a group of teachers that can communicate some of the data, but not only the data, but what's really going on with the students in that 6th, 7th, 8th grade period.
Mm-hmm.
And even, in middle school, they're often connected to the elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
So students know, next year I'm going to get Miss Smith because those students move up and there's more of a communication there. But that link between junior high school and that high school piece, we lose a lot of students there. And our black young men and some of the young ladies, the reading scores have already started to drop off a lot of times in the junior high school grades. So I think the high school has a place to play in that, and they have a strength because those students are coming your way.
I want you to speak on the conversation that we had earlier about Jeffrey Canada, about where he was, and then what he had to see in order to sort of make his Harlem initiative sort of work, because he thought he was coming in and was going to start at a certain point and move forward, and he realized he couldn't do that. So I want you to speak to that.
So Jeffrey Canada, real strong brother. Shout out to Jeffrey Canada, Harlem Zone, and everybody there. But from what I gather, what he realized was he thought he was going to start in one area, let's say on the school side, and he realized, hey, these students they need help before they get here. So he had to take it back to the early grades, and then he took it back to the kindergarten, then he took it back to pre-kindergarten, then he took it back to helping parents, Then he took it back to nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Then he took it back to medical care,
Mm-hmm.
because all those things are connected,
Mm-hmm.
and one feeds the next. So he developed the Harlem Zone with that idea in mind, that has a pipeline from beginning to end,
Mm-hmm.
and he can guarantee pretty much college is going to happen, because he has control, or they have the data, and they have their hands on everything that's going on in every grade.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the home, in addition to helping with nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
a medical facility in the building,
Mm-hmm.
and all these things. And it was just a very practical approach
Mm-hmm.
to something that's really needed. And I feel like, regular schools are trying those things, but it leads you that way. In a pandemic, I wonder, how are my kids really eating?
Yeah, well, one of the things, and we talked about it earlier too, so since you brought up the pandemic, we'll just slide right into that, about thoughts on closing the educational divide, right? So I know we always talk about that, and then, but we've had those conversations without a pandemic happening. So with all that was just said, though, how do we close that gap? And there's no quick answer for that. Like, you're not going to solve that in this session, and we're not going to solve that in probably the next few. However, just what's your thoughts on closing the educational divide?
So, our approach a lot of times has been sort of the same. I think that's why we became friends so quick. But our initial approach is using the energy that we have to do all that we can.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm older, I realize that you need a team to do that. But first of all, you got to know what you're trying to close. But that first level is always the energy that it takes to approach a student in a way where they know that you believe in them no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Once a young man or young lady knows that, then you can move. Now, that may be visiting the home at 3 in the afternoon, 6 in the afternoon, 8 in the evening if mom gets home at 8. It may be Saturday morning standing on somebody's porch because you reviewed assignments and you realize that they're not working up to their potential.
Mm-hmm.
It may be talking to them outside or in your office. It can come in a lot of different ways, but there has to be a belief in the student that Mr. Belton or Mr. Pinckney is not going to let me just drop. He's not going to let me fall. He's not going to accept this. This is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
He believes I can do more. Once you get that area there, then you can really step into the real academics and approach it in a different way. That gap that we often talk about has to do with a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to the Jeffrey Canada
Mm-hmm.
comment, but also with basic reading. Once you learn how to read, what is your frequency? How often do you read?
Mm-hmm.
What do you read?
Mm-hmm.
What do you reflect on? Is it all the cell phone? Is it all the computer? Are you reading those little short articles on the computer and that's the extent of
Mm-hmm.
it? Or are you having some real thought? You're reading something and turning it over in your mind. I think a lot of students, and we know they're extremely intelligent,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but trying to get that into the school and the interest and the energy into school is something totally different. And I think that's why when we were in middle school, we kept writing the grants.
Right.
Because we were trying to bring the outside world
Mm-hmm.
inside to the
Mm-hmm.
classroom to make it applicable. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be all over the place.
No.
but it's a lot in there.
Right. I like the idea. When Dave and I worked together, Dave Dave spearheaded this initiative and started to put these grants out to Chase
Mm-hmm.
at the time, and did excellent, did a great job, phenomenal job at making sure that I think for like 3 or 4 years consecutively,
Mm-hmm.
we were given the opportunity. We would write the grant, and then Dave wrote it out, and then then we enacted it, and then we were successful, and showed them what we did, and then we were able to get the funding again the following year. I thought that was excellent. So when I'm thinking also about the educational divide, I'm thinking about things like that. I'm thinking about the creativity that teachers have to bring to the table, right? Because sometimes you want to bring in that kid that you might be working with a future NASA scientist or something like that and not know. So I think it's the creativity and the things that we have to, the extra things we have to bring into the class. Another one of those extra things that we brought into the class was like that idea that you weren't going to quit on our dime, right? Sure. And so we had a good cohort of teachers that worked together where they were like, where students were not going to quit on our dime. Yeah. And so, and I think, and some of the readings that I've been reading, they speak directly to the parents. So they talk about what's going on in the home, because we spend a lot of resources on the school, and we talk a lot about the teachers. But the other variables that are out there, is what's happening in the home. Yeah. And I remember you and I teaching one time, and I remember this kid saying, "Mr. Belton, I love the energy that you give me, but I still got to go back home." Sure. And that was crazy though. So you were correct. Definitely, I definitely believe that educational divide has a lot of moving parts with it. But it's good to know that there's people like you in the game that can kind of keep it moving and touch on all of them to make sure that our students are receiving the supports and everything that they need to be successful. So,
and even now, you have to always ask yourself about balance. Because a lot of times I feel like looking back, I was out of balance where I was doing too much in one area, not enough in the other, or I should have handed some things off, and because in administration and as a teacher, you always want to guard yourself against being burned out. So because there's so many social issues and so many other things going on, you can get lost in it. So as I've gotten older, you have to ask yourself, okay, you want to keep balance, but you want to be effective. So those things are always happening now. Even just to hit the pandemic piece one more time, we've worked hard on making the schools a welcoming environment. We even have in our observations, how welcome is your school, your classroom. Right. We've worked hard on that over the years, where I know for the elementary school, I played music at the front door. As students got off the bus, we clapped it up. We welcomed them in. We got hugs. We looked in the students' faces to try to see what kind of night they had. Did they eat? We got them to breakfast. Tried to talk to them to see what the vibe was, how they were feeling before they got to the classroom. Now all of that is gone. Now they're signing on at 8:30, and it's raw. It's right there. Let's go. And we're not catching all of them the same way. Some of them need somebody from outside to help, to encourage them. I have one student that has he's one of 10, and mom is pregnant. And mom has her hands full. She's having a baby, and she's got 10 children. But the time is still going on, and the student still has to be productive. So this is forcing us now to build different relationships with the home, because we're trying to make sure that we educate in that environment, and the environment we built is not even accessible.
We talked earlier, you and I feel like the way that we direct traffic, or the connections, that the relationships that we build with our student body, I feel like I'm operating with one hand tied behind my back, because it's complicated, because I can't put the hands on the student. So we're talking about my senior class, so I can't physically call 200, 300 kids down into the cafeteria or the gym and get on them about applying for college, financial aid papers are in, and deadlines. So I can't do that where I could before. And so I send out a blast, but I don't know if all of the students received it, and I don't know, who's taking it seriously. Right. So there's things that are happening in this new normal that it's problematic to people like us because we can't physically put our hands or can't actually see the kid, and so whether it's those students who are failing, it takes time to. I told my soup that it takes time to get. I probably put more mileage driving, doing home visits than I've done just driving, just the regular, hey, let me go here or let me go see this or go to a friend's house just because, it's so much need on the outside of that. But I totally agree with you that the times have changed. And so, I don't want to adapt to the new normalcy so much because I'm ready to get back to the hands-on. But I guess, we'll see what that looks like.
Right. But one thing, if I can just add on, one of the things you have is you have the passion for the students, and that's going to come through eventually. You're going to find the vehicle. So the blast that you send, the videos that you do, developing the podcast for not the students but for the academic community, and all these things. I think what you're doing is you're finding out new ways to reach people. Yeah. And everybody's going to have to do that.
Everybody's going to have to do that.
That's not just you.
Yep.
I think you may end up doing it better than other people. And, that's my biased opinion. But I think that you will find a way to reach your students because you and I know it's all about relationship anyway. No matter what. If the kid is a genius and is getting straight A's in school and then moves on to college, I've heard them say, I couldn't do it without Mr. Belton. You helped me here. You helped me here. If the kid is frustrated and 2 grade levels behind and throwing a pencil across the classroom and saying, forget it, I've heard that kid at graduation say the same thing. I couldn't have done it without Mr. Belton. So that truth and those relationships, that's going to come through the blast or the phone call or the home visit. It's going to come through. It may be a little different, but it's there, Yeah. And that truth, just to encourage you, because I'm doing the same thing. As time goes on, we're in the fall now, but those things are going to add up if we come back or if we don't come back. So, we know it's necessary.
I am laughing at Dave right now because I might be known for my home visits right now, but I think that started in the space with you. Remember, the school that we taught together in was situated in between like two big projects from where we were, and it was no problem for Dave to just be like, we're going to do this at lunchtime. And we just dealt with situations so fast that, before you knew it, you didn't even have to spend time making a phone call after school because we were already at the homes during lunch. We were eating, we would grab a McDonald's burger and be it on the 13F or 12E or whatever it was. So, yeah, man. Yeah, those were some good times and some solid connections. I wanted to drop this in your ear because I wanted your thoughts on this, and I had told you that I had come across some data, and so I fact checked it twice. So we'll make sure that it's tight, but I want your thoughts on it. It says since 2014, ethnic and racial minorities make up more than half of the student population in public schools. Right, so half of the student body are ethnic and racial minorities. It says, yet about 80% of the teachers are white and 77% of them are female. And we've discussed that in the past. People of color make up about 20% of teachers. A mere 2% of that are black men. What's your thoughts on that?
Wow. So if that's true, okay, so there was and I forget the name of this, the years, forgive me about this, but there was a time where there were a lot of African American men teaching in the South, and it was before black students and white students were bused and all that integration. It was before integration, where black schools were black schools. From what I understand, there were more. I'm not going to say they were predominantly or anything like that, but there were a lot of black men in education, I heard, and we're moving towards education. And then when integration occurred, black students moved to white schools more than white students moved to black schools. But from what I heard, there wasn't as much of a need for black male teachers anymore in white schools, definitely. But there were less spaces in black schools. And there was a move from the South to the North to the factories to get jobs. And, you know, you could fact check this, I guess, later, but I'd heard that migration to the North for factory jobs is where a lot of men trying to lead their families and make more money came north. And I think from that time period, I think it's documented that there were fewer black men in education. But when you look at it today, you know, it's sort of one of those things where it's difficult to become what you can't see. So if you don't have black male teachers that are making an impression on you, and you don't see males reading and using academics in their employment.
Right.
That's not a regular thing to you.
Right. Then that's
that's not
that's not going to be your regular thing.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Yeah. So we have a group of men that are trying to be fathers that didn't have that example. And you know that's a lot right there. Trying to be something that wasn't shown to you. But,
You know, Dave, when I saw it, it pushed me back a little bit because I could only help but think about the minority students who are, especially the male students who are classified with some sort of classification or some sort of 504 plan, some sort of label that says what they can and what they can't do for the majority of the time. And I'm not saying that it can't happen from someone who a professional and outside of race, but I'm saying that with the numbers that are at this level and the role even at a 20%, if people of color still make up only 20%, and now half the student body sitting in front of folks are almost 50%, you know, then I'm wondering there needs to be another eye or a lot more training. Because then it can't be where, you know, because, you know, Jason acts up a certain way that, you know, this is the box we put him in, you know, and especially when I can be trained to a degree, but I can still come to work with my own biases.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
So
yeah, you touched on something really heavy, and I'm gonna challenge you in your podcast journey to pull some people in on that, on that IEP piece, on that classification piece, on that why they think there's so many black males that end up in that classification and don't move out, because we work with those students now, and brilliant. The young men and young ladies are brilliant, but when you see acting out behaviors, those behaviors are coming from something else. They're behaviors that are originating someplace else. So a lot of times when we talk, as educators, we talk about the behaviors and we put it all in the report, and it's written up what the student did, what the student said, how they responded, what they did, what they didn't do. But a lot of times that other piece, the behaviors are because of this, and we're working on that piece. It's not really a lot of times from what I've seen, it's not a cohesive match where you're working on both sides. But as educators, I know we have to focus on the education, but like you said, we have these students sitting in front of us every day, and you want to ask yourself, what can I do, or how do I reach these students, and how do I bring them to a higher level?
I love that you said that, man. There's a scene in the Untouchables, and I just put it on a shirt when Sean Connery is sort of shot at the end, and I forgot the Kevin Costner runs in and catches him just before his demise, and he says to him, he tells him what he needs to do, and then Kevin Costner acts as if he doesn't know what to do, and then he pulls him in close, and like almost with his last breath, he says, "What are you prepared to do?" And you almost have to wonder, like you when you think about these young men who've been classified, and so now they're taken out of the normalcy of classes, and then their whole educational pattern is changed because someone came up with a brilliant idea, like something that you just said, Dave. Like, but then they're relegated to that pathway all through school now. Right, all through school. So you take me out of my normalcy for a few years. Now I need the 504. Right, and so you done put me in a space. But I like you said with the challenge, I definitely want to bring folks in, because what are we prepared to do to ensure that, one, that these students belong there, and two, that they don't have, the ones that don't need to stay there are removed. Right. So I think it has to come back on to the educator to say, what are we prepared to do? Yeah. You know,
I like that. I think I'm gonna take that with me, man, because when we worked in the JJC and we work with incarcerated youth, one of the things, man, I'll always remember is you can see their brilliance, man. When you look in their eyes and listen to them, you can see their brilliance. It's right there.
I think what you just said is even what was key, is the listening to them part, right? I mean, we have so many situations where I broke up a fight one time, and I spoke to one student, and then I really didn't pay attention to the other, and he was like, "Well, Mr. Belton, when do I get my couple minutes in?" And I realized, I always have to be in a listening space. You know what I'm saying? And so, definitely, I do appreciate what you said, because I even tell my administrators, like, the part of being a good administrator is sometimes just being quiet and just hearing what folks are actually saying, and you can take that piece and move on.
Yeah, that's good advice to a new teacher, a new administrator, because a lot of times students are trying to tell us something, whether they storm out of class or whether they're doing everything you ask them to do, they're still talking. Yeah, and I think that's part of, again, with the pandemic piece, I'm realizing and speaking to you, it's making me reflect on how much information I got just being around the students. I was communicating with them, even if I wasn't talking, I was watching and picking up. But it's what it's doing is it's telling me that I got to develop that even while students are home. A way to listen. And
because it was easier. It was easier before when they were face to face. Because I just was sitting here thinking, and I remember how many times we knew who needed food, we knew who needed some sort of assistance, we knew who lights were off and whatever. we knew who needed some sort of support. We knew something. We knew who was about to fight after school just because we had that one-on-one connection, and we were listening. And so, with that sort of volume going, like you said earlier, we just have to find another way to adapt and sort of change that out.
Yeah, but this time when you find it, put it on the podcast and put it in the book.
I got you. Let me ask you, what do you see as being the biggest challenge in education outside of COVID? What do you think is what do you see as seeing one of the biggest challenges in education?
I think it's the same one as the country, man. I mean, on Sundays, we go to church, and there's a white church and a black church, and we say we pray to the same God, but there's a white and black church. We have health care, but when some communities say health care, they mean something a whole lot different than an urban community that says health care. But they call it health care.
Right.
When some people go to the grocery store, they go to a grocery store. Some people go to the corner store, but they go shopping for food. And those disparities are packaged, to me, they're packaged in everything. And when you get to education, I think it doesn't change. I don't think you can separate a lot of times those things that are happening in the world. Just because you step into school, it means everything is equal. Now we're starting off. No, you're not. And I think one of the challenges with education is being realistic and being truthful about where you really are and what your needs really are for the family, for the staff, and addressing them.
I love that. I love that. I just said this the other day. I was I made a mistake and I misjudged something. And I was with my administrative team and I had to turn to them. And I said, there's two things we will always be, and that's honest and professional.
There you go. Right.
And so we will own whatever we do. The one of the biggest things though, that I see, is the selling of, and I know we spoke about this too. I feel like at times, like I'm a used car salesman, right? One of the biggest challenges for me is to make, it's the selling of education, right? And so when I find it hard to sell education, that becomes problematic because we're doing too much to sell the product. Right. And so when I can tell you, and there's examples of me showing you how much you need education and where it can take you, right. I don't feel like I should. It's not that I don't feel like it. It's becoming, why am I selling education at the point of exhaustion when you know what it can do for you? Right. And so one of the biggest challenges for me in education is the selling of the product, right? And you embracing this product, right? And because I know, Dave, for years we understand that students learn at different times, right? And me and you've been we dealt with the same kids enough to when we saw our young ladies outshine by gleams of the boys, and the disparity in the maturity between girls and boys but when do we for me, the biggest challenge is that selling of education in real time, right? Because it looks a lot different. That sale of education is a lot different 2 and 3 years after high school. Right. Now it's like, I got to find it. I got to do. Now you in the grind. It's real. Right. And I'm not saying that you can't go back to school and find those things or be connected to someone who puts you in the right space. But a big challenge is it's just selling is the way we sell education. So
that has a lot of pieces to what you're saying.
Right.
I'm gonna go back and watch this because it has a lot of pieces and it can go a lot of different ways. But some communities don't have to sell it. Right,
Dave. Right.
They don't sell it.
Right.
Well, let me say it this way: some communities do sell it. You're going to be a doctor.
Yeah. Right.
Or you're going to be a lawyer.
Right.
Or you're going to be an engineer.
Right. And it's that sell it, and I'm going to let you go, but it's easy to sell it when the kid sees it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Because mom and dad are
right.
A doctor
right.
and an engineer.
Right.
And my kids are going to be a doctor and an engineer.
Right.
And we know that. Yeah, you're third grade, but, you're going to do this math. And I'm going to sit with you to make sure it's done. And you understand what's coming next.
Right. Right.
So some communities have that piece, or cultures. Some cultures have other pieces where, and it's not just the cultures because Black people are so diversified, and you can get lost in that too. But some people have the culture where, hey, I went to this school. And yeah, my kids are in 5th grade, but they're going to this school, and they do the application and ask, where did your parents go here? Yes, my parents went here.
Right.
That's where I'm going.
That's where I'm going.
And we do have some of that legacy in HBCUs and some other schools, but then there's another group of our people who don't trust the system. They don't trust that the people that are building the supermarket 5 miles away want to build something in our neighborhood that has fresh fruits and vegetables. They don't trust the healthcare system. Some of them don't trust the church.
The schools.
And they definitely don't trust the schools. As a matter of fact, when their child is walking to school or coming back from school, they're in fear that the child will make it safely and come back. So you have a mother who may be mother or father, maybe just mother, who loves their son, and needs to protect their son. But you're asking that mother to entrust that son and their future into the school. And if that connection is not made, even though technically school is, everybody needs education, and education is your way out, and all those things that people say, the reality is, man, a lot of people are afraid. And sometimes when you have to call a parent and say, listen, you have to make your son or your daughter do this, or they're behind, a year and a half behind in this subject. What are we going to do? This is what we're prepared to do. Please help us, support us. A lot of times, not to give excuses or anything, but that's a connection that needs to be made. So there are a lot of aspects to what you were just talking about.
Right.
But it can feel like you have to sell it because somebody may be working 2 jobs, and the child is coming home by themselves, and when they get home, they're too tired to check on the homework, and you may not feel supported on that end. There could be a whole lot of different things, or sometimes parents aren't comfortable with academics because they didn't finish school, or they're struggling with what's on the computer or what's in the book. And we've had parents actually tell us later on that, hey, thank you, because this is the way I felt, or this is why I wasn't answering the phone. So you got to get in there, man. You got to get in there, and you got to get under the surface. And that's just the way it is. I guess it goes back to, what are you prepared to do? That's exactly it. Because no matter what it's showing you, it reminds me of basketball players. They ask them at the end of the game, how were you able to score 40? I took what the defense gave me. I saw what was on the floor, and I saw they couldn't cover the whole floor, so they covered this side, and I took the other side. And when they adjusted, I went to the other. And it's education. A lot of times for me, is like that. It's alive. It's moving. Each week is different. You're dealing with real people, real relationships, real issues, and adaptability, man, is the thing. That's what gives. I think I get energy from that possibility that this can work.
I like that. Well, I have one more follow up. It's, what is one piece of practical advice you want to give a potential administrator?
One that I didn't know until my assistant superintendent presently is showing me to actually write out your task list to what you need to do. Prioritize it. That can seem daunting at first. Just get it out and get it on paper. Anything that's due with a time frame, put that time frame beside it, and approach your day that way. Take it from me, because you can be well intentioned, but all those things running around in your head, they just gonna run around in your head. And you can get home at the end of the day and still have them running around and beat yourself up. Well intentioned, but you want to focus your energy on what's going to be beneficial. So, if somebody would have told me initially, I probably would have heard it, but wouldn't have understood it the way I understand it now. Like Kobe Bryant said, the one thing that we take for granted is time.
And on that, I do believe that we, if I had to give a piece of advice to a potential administrator, it would be to not be so connected at the hip to what you actually pulled out and learned from school. From your certification process. That puts you at the table, right? But that time piece, and knowing how to apply it and use it effectively, that's one, because you still want to make sure you got time for the family and in your life. But I would ask them to make sure that to filter out the things that are said to them, right? Because it was a lot of things as a new administrator that people told me that I couldn't do and that I shouldn't do. And it took years later to really figure this thing out, to say, I can do that. You know what? And when I do it, I'm going to do it better than it's been done. Right. And so those folks who are the naysayers, who would tell me, you know, I spend too much time listening to them. So I would definitely, my advice to a new administrator would be like, to listen, like focus in on the things you want to do. The things you think you can change, right? Don't let somebody get in your head and in your ear. You know, I that would be my advice to potential administrators. I got the thumbs up from Mr. Torres, so we're gonna wrap it.
Okay. Let me just say this.
No. Go ahead. We still had a minute. Go ahead.
You know what? I used to fault people for what they said to me that I later realized wasn't true for me. But then I had to realize they were only talking from their experience. Right. So I don't think it was that they were trying to hold me back in a certain area, but their experience of what they went through and how they had to develop. Right. They were giving me the best advice at that time that they could give me based on what they had, what they saw. And you know, that's funny that you say that, because everybody gives that advice. It's like the person with the 5-year-old child. They said, before they were 5, you know, it was people saying, oh, they're going to be 2, you know, they're going to tear stuff up in 2. And your kid gets to 2 and doesn't tear anything up. Exactly. You know, or wait till they become a teenager. Right. Your kid becomes a teenager and they're good. People only can speak from their experience. So, that just reminds me of that.
Yeah. So, Mr. T, we'll wrap it up. I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Definitely appreciate you tuning in. What we'll do is we'll make sure that this is we keep the series going. Definitely like to thank Mr. David Pinckney for coming through.
Thanks.
I definitely want to have him come back through whenever he has the time to bless us with his presence. Yes, sir. And again to Mr. Torres and Healthy Living, and Fearless Leader signing out.